This story is a fictional narrative inspired by real-life emotions and everyday experiences.
Chapter 1. Her finger was bleeding, but she wasn't crying. When my mom slammed the door on my hand, I didn't cry because it hurt. I cried because I realized she picked her faith over me. And 8 years later, my husband picked the women in his phone over me too. The phone buzzed for the 15th time. I looked at the screen. Mum popped up, then disappeared, then popped up again. Michael was in the kitchen, heating up 2 bowls of noodles from that little shop in Chinatown. He was smiling, clueless, waving for me to come over. "Eat," he said. "It's late. I'll drive you home." I slipped the phone into my pocket. 15 missed calls. That never happened. My place was 20 minutes from Michael's. For those 20 minutes, I sat frozen in my seat, watching the streetlights zoom by. My fingers dug into the armrest, nails pressing into the leather. Michael drove with one hand and held mine with the other, occasionally bringing it to his lips. "Sarah, you okay?" "Yeah," I said. But I wasn't. Something in my stomach kept twisting, over and over, like someone was wringing out a sponge. The car stopped in front of my house. The living room light was still on. 2 people sat on the couch, completely still. I knew right away it was my parents. "I'll walk you in," Michael said. "Don't worry about it." I opened the car door. The Texas night air blew in, smelling like dry grass. "If you walk me in, your mum will worry." Michael looked at me for a long moment. "I'll call you tomorrow morning." "Okay." I closed the door. I stood there watching his car back away before I turned around. The little white house, the old wooden fence, the big oak tree in the front yard, all so familiar. But tonight it felt strange, too quiet. I pushed the door open. The air inside was heavy like lead. Mum sat on the couch, hands on her knees, back straight. Dad sat next to her, his face all red. On the table, the Bible was open. I knew which page. Luke 15, the story of the prodigal son. "Sit down," Mom said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut right through me. I sat in the armchair across from them. Between us was the wooden table with 2 cold cups of tea. "Aunt Patricia came by tonight," Mum began. "She told me something." My heart stopped. "She saw you in Chinatown with some man." Mum paused. "He's Chinese, isn't he?" "His name is Michael," I said. "Michael Chen." Mum stood up. She was wearing this grey, long-sleeved shirt, her hair in a tight bun. When she stood, even her shadow looked angry. "Chen," Mum repeated, mocking. "What kind of last name is that? Like, you know Chinese people don't follow our religion, right? You know they worship their ancestors, don't believe in God." "He's good to me," I said. I knew it sounded weak, but I didn't know what else to say. "Good?" Mum laughed, but her eyes weren't laughing. "What do you know about good? This is your first relationship and you think you know what love is. What do you know about men?" Dad sat there, staring at the floor. He said nothing. In this house, Dad never said anything when Mum got mad. "I'm 2 years old," I said. My voice shook, but I tried to hold it together. "I'm not a kid anymore. At your age, I was already married to your father. And I married someone from our faith. A decent person, someone our family approved of." I stood up. I didn't know what I was doing. I just couldn't sit still anymore. That chair felt like it was on fire. "I love him," I said. "He's good to me. He cooks for me. He drives me to work. "Stop!" Mum yelled. Her face was bright red. "You don't know what love is. You've only known him for a few months. You think you know everything about life?" My face burned. Tears welled up, but I wouldn't let them fall. I looked straight at Mum. At least he never slammed a door on my hand. Mum froze. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then her face went pale, then red again, redder than before. "What did you say?" "How dare you talk to me like that?" I stepped back. I was scared now, but I was also angry, and that anger blurred everything. "I need some space," I said. "I'm going outside for a bit." I turned and walked toward the door. My hand touched the handle, pulled it open. The night air rushed in. Then I heard footsteps behind me, fast, hard. And the door I was still holding, suddenly slammed shut. A dry cracking sound. I didn't understand what happened at first. I just saw my hand, my right hand, stuck between the door and the frame. Mom had slammed it shut. She didn't know my hand was still there. Then I saw blood. It poured from my middle fingertip. That finger. It didn't look like a finger anymore. The nail, the light pink nail I'd painted just yesterday, popped off, flipped backward. Blood came out from under it, flowing down my hand, my wrist, dripping onto the wood floor. But I didn't scream. Didn't cry. I just stood there looking at Mum. Mum's face went white. Her hands were still on the door. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She looked at my hand, then at my face, then back at my hand. "Oh my God," my dad gasped. He stood up, but his feet seemed nailed to the floor. Then footsteps ran down the stairs. David, my brother, was pulling on his jeans, his face still sleepy. "What the hell?" He looked around, then saw my hand. His face went pale. "Holy crap!" He ran over, pushed Mum aside. She stumbled and fell onto the floor. David grabbed my wrist and pulled me to the bathroom. His grip was tight, but I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anything. "First aid kit," he yelled. "Get the first aid kit." In the bathroom, he turned on the cold water. It rushed over my hand, mixing with blood, running pink down the drain. I watched my finger under the water. The nail flipped up, looked horrible. The flesh underneath was pink and wet, blood still oozing out. "Sit down," David said. He pushed me onto the toilet lid. His hands shook as he dug through the medicine cabinet for bandages. I looked in the mirror. In the mirror, a 24-year-old girl stared back at me. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red but dry. There were drops of water on her cheek, but I didn't know if it was from the sink or tears. On her shirt, the white shirt Michael gave me, bloodstains spread like red flowers. I looked at those eyes. And I wondered, what am I doing here? David bandaged my hand. He worked fast and clumsy, wrapping it too tight, so tight my fingertips went numb. But I said nothing. I just watched the white gauze as a small red dot appeared. Then that dot grew bigger. "Mum didn't mean it," David said. He wasn't looking at me, just at my half-bandaged hand. I stayed quiet. "Say something." I stayed quiet. From outside, I heard Mum crying, small choked sobs, like someone trying not to cry but failing, then Dad whispering, too quiet to understand. David finished bandaging. He stood up, looked at me for a moment, then he walked out, closing the bathroom door, leaving me alone with the mirror. I sat there. My tears still wouldn't fall. I looked at my white bandaged hand, at the growing red spot, at the water drops on my face in the mirror. And I whispered, to the girl in the mirror, to my mum, to someone out there who might be listening. "But I still love him, Mum." Outside, Mum kept crying, and me, I looked at my finger and knew. This wound would heal, but something inside me, something deeper than flesh and bone, had just cracked. And I didn't know if it would ever heal. Chapter 2. Emma's apartment and the I love you texts. Emma's apartment was tiny. One bedroom, a living room that was also the kitchen, and that old grey couch we bought together in college. That night, I lay on that couch staring at the ceiling. Emma didn't ask many questions. When I knocked on her door at 1 a.m, my hand bandaged, my eyes red, she just looked at me for a moment, then pulled me inside. She got out blankets and pillows, put them on the couch, and said, "Talk if you want. Don't talk if you don't." I didn't say anything, I just lay down. Now it was 3 a.m. Outside, occasional cars drove by. Inside, the fan hummed steadily. I looked at my finger. The bandage had dried, the bloodstain hadn't spread. But I still heard that cracking sound. It echoed in my head, over and over, like someone snapping a dry twig. I held my hand up in front of me. In the dark, the white bandage glowed faintly. I moved my finger. Sharp pain, but that pain was easier to handle than the emptiness in my chest. Buzz. My phone vibrated on the coffee table. The screen lit up, casting a pale glow on the ceiling. "Mum." I didn't answer. I watched that name blink, then fade. A minute later, it lit up again, then faded, then lit up again. 7 missed calls. Then texts started appearing. "Mum loves you. Come home. We can talk." I read it. then put the phone down. God doesn't want this for you. I bit my lip. You're destroying this family. I closed my eyes. Tears flowed, wetting my ears, wetting the pillow. But I didn't cry out loud. I didn't want Emma to hear. Mum and Dad only want what's best for you. Come home. Mum promises not to say anything else. Sarah, where are you? Aunt Patricia says you're wrong. Listen to her. Each new text felt like someone stabbing me. But I didn't know which hurt more. The mum loves you or the you're destroying this family. I didn't reply to any of them. I just lay there watching the ceiling, watching my phone light up and fade, light up and fade. By 5 a.m, the phone went silent. I sat up as dawn broke. Emma was already up making coffee in the kitchen. She looked at me, said nothing, just pushed a cup toward me. I held it with my left hand. My right hand, all bandaged, couldn't grip well. You want to stay here a few days? Emma asked. I nodded. Going to work? I nodded again. Emma sighed. She pulled out a chair and sat across from me, holding her coffee cup, watching me for a long time. She wanted to say something, I knew. But finally she just said, I'll drive you to work. My phone buzzed. Michael. I grabbed it immediately. His voice on the other end was still sleepy. Sarah? I've been calling since last night. You okay? I told him what happened. My voice shook when I described the cracking sound, the blood, David pulling me to the bathroom. When I finished, the other end stayed quiet for a long time. I'm sorry, Michael said. It's not your fault. I'll come talk to your parents tomorrow. His voice shook. I heard it. He was scared. I knew he was scared. Scared to face my parents, scared of their hateful looks. But he said it anyway. I closed my eyes. A tiny warmth spread in my chest. Thank you, I said. The next morning I went to work. The little coffee shop where I worked sat on a street corner near the university. I walked in, put on my apron, started making coffee like nothing had happened. Hey there, sweetheart. Mr. Collins, a regular, waved. Give me my usual black coffee. I smiled, coming right up. My hand shook as I poured hot water. The thick bandage made me clumsy, but I managed, setting the cup down in front of him. Thanks, dear, Mr. Collins said. Have a good day. A young couple walked in with their little daughter. I smiled at them, asked what they wanted. The husband ordered a latte. The wife asked for milk tea. I made them, handed them over. Have a nice day, you guys. 8 a.m, 10 a.m, 12 noon. I smiled at every customer. I said, have a nice day, to all of them. None of them knew that last night I'd cried until I had no tears left. None of them saw the bandaged hand under my glove. Emma sat in the corner drinking coffee, watching me. Her eyes were worried. I knew she was watching, but I couldn't look back. Work ended. 5 p.m, the sky getting dark. I took off my apron, walked to the parking lot. The wind was cold. I pulled my jacket tight and hurried toward my old car. Then I saw her. Under the old oak tree at the edge of the lot, a woman sat huddled on a bench. She wore a thick brown sweater, arms wrapped around herself. Her hair was a little messy, like she'd been sitting there a long time. In the dim yellow streetlight, I could see her face clearly. Mom. Linda Thompson. My mother. She stood up when she saw me. Her legs shook slightly. She walked toward me, slow steps, like she was afraid I'd run. The distance between us shrank. 5 meters. 3 meters. 1 meter. I saw her red eyes, the deep wrinkles on her face, the Sanya and si, her trembling hands reaching out, then dropping. Come home with me, she said. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying a lot. Please. I stood there looking at Mum. In my head, the texts flashed. Mum loves you. Come home. You're destroying this family. God doesn't want this for you. Then I looked down at my hand. The white bandage. The hand that remembered that cracking sound. I looked up at Mum. Mum was crying. Tears streamed down her face, uncontrollable. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The wind blew, tossing my hair into my face. In the cold Texas evening, I stood in the empty parking lot, looking at the woman who gave birth to me. The woman who slammed the door on my hand. The woman standing in front of me now, crying. I started. But I didn't know what to say. Mum reached out, her hand stretched toward me, trembling. Please, she said, just that one word, soft as a sigh. I looked at that hand, the hand that slapped me when I was 15 for lying, the hand that hugged me when I graduated high school, the hand that slammed the door on me 2 nights ago. I didn't know what to do. My tears started falling. For the first time since that night, I cried in front of someone. I cried, but I still didn't reach out. Mum stood there, hand still out, tears still falling. In the yellow light, we stood looking at each other, 1 meter apart, but farther apart than I'd ever felt. I said again, but I still didn't know what to say. I just stood there, crying, looking at Mum's outstretched hand. That hand had hurt me, but it was also the hand that stroked my head when I had a fever, that cooked me good meals, that stayed up waiting for me to come home from school. I lifted my hand, very slowly, shaking badly. Then I stopped. I looked down at my right hand, the white bandage. Under the wrapping, my finger still throbbed. I looked at Mum. I don't know, I said. My voice was tiny like a mosquito in the wind. I don't know what to do anymore. Mum froze. Then she lowered her hand. She stood there looking at me, crying. I turned and walked toward my car. Behind me, I heard Mum call, "Sarah!" I stopped but didn't turn around. "Come home, baby, please. I'm sorry." That "I'm sorry" hit me like a hammer in the back. I stood still for a long moment. Then I opened my car door and got in. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Mum still under that tree, arms wrapped around herself, small and alone in the empty lot. I turned the key. The engine started. I drove away, not daring to look back again. On the way to Emma's apartment, I cried the whole time. Cried so hard I had to pull over, bury my face in the steering wheel and sob. I didn't even know why I was crying anymore, from pain, anger, longing, or that I'm sorry. All I knew was, inside my chest, the crack from last night had grown a little wider, and I didn't know how to fix it. Chapter 3. He showed up, not a prince, but he showed up. My old car sat under the oak tree. Mum was in the passenger seat, hands on her knees, staring straight ahead. Outside, the parking lot was empty. The convenience store nearby still had its lights on, but nobody was coming or going. I still hadn't started the engine. We'd been sitting in the car for 10 minutes, neither of us saying anything. Finally, Mum turned to me. In the dim light from the street lamp, I could see her eyes were still red. "I have something to say," she began. Her voice was completely different, not sharp, not commanding like usual. It was soft and shaky, like she was talking to a stranger. I stayed quiet, waiting. If he comes to meet our family," Mum said, "if he shows his face, shows he's serious, then I'll accept it." I froze. I turned to look at Mum, not believing my ears. "What?" Mum didn't look at me. She stared out the window into the darkness. "I said, if he comes, if he has enough courage to face this family, then I won't stop you anymore." My heart pounded. A tiny hope, small and fragile as a thread, began to flicker in my chest. "But Mum..." "I know." Mum cut me off. She turned to me, looking straight into my eyes. "I know I was wrong to slam the door on your hand. I know I lost my temper, but I only want what's best for you, Sarah. I'm just afraid you'll get hurt." I bit my lip. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight. "If he comes," Mum continued, "if he's willing to sit down and talk with your dad and me, then I'll believe he really loves you." I looked at Mum for a long time. Then I nodded. "Okay," I said, "I'll call him." Mum sighed. She patted my good hand gently, then opened the door and got out. Before closing it, she added, "Go home and sleep. You have work tomorrow." I watched her walk to the family's old car parked in the corner. Then I pulled out my phone. My fingers shook as I dialed Michael's number. He answered after a few rings. "Sarah?" His voice was worried. "You okay? What's wrong?" I took a deep breath. "Mom agreed to meet you," I said. "Can you come?" Silence. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. My heart stopped. I heard him breathing on the other end, shallow and fast. Sansim. 5 seconds. 6 seconds. 7 seconds. 8 seconds. "I'm really scared," Michael said. His voice was tiny, like a child's. "I'm so scared, Sarah. I'm scared your parents will hate me. I'm scared I'll make everything worse." 9 seconds. But I'll come, I breathed out. My whole body felt like I'd just run a long race, exhausted but relieved. Thank you, I whispered. I didn't know that in those 10 seconds of silence, Michael almost said no. I didn't know he'd stared at the wall in front of him, biting his lip until it bled, and only decided to agree at the very last second. All I knew was that he said yes, and to me, at that moment, that was enough. 2 days later, 3 p.m, Michael arrived. I stood at the living room window, watching his old car park in front of the house. He got out, holding a big box of fruit, the kind wrapped in clear plastic, with red apples and oranges on top. His shirt was neatly ironed, light blue, tucked into dress pants. His hair was combed nicely. But I could see his hands shaking. He walked from the gate to the house, slow steps. When he reached the porch, I opened the door. His eyes looked at me, then down at my bandaged hand, his lips pressed together. "Come in," I whispered. He nodded and stepped inside. The living room was unusually clean today. Mom had cleaned since morning. On the table were fruit, pastries, tea. Dad sat on the big couch holding a newspaper but not reading. Mom sat beside him, hands on her knees. Michael stopped in the middle of the room. He bowed his head slightly. "Hello, Uncle and Auntie," he said. His voice was a little hoarse. "I'm Michael Chen. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." Dad said nothing. He looked Michael up and down, from his polished shoes, to his dress pants, to his shirt, up to his face, which was getting paler by the second from nerves. That look lasted forever. So long, I wanted to run over and grab Michael's hand. Mom stood up and took the fruit box. "Sit down," she said. Her voice wasn't warm, but it wasn't as cold as I'd expected. Michael sat in the armchair across from my parents. I sat next to him. Silence. I heard the wall clock ticking. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Mum poured tea, handed Michael a cup. He took it with both hands like Asian people do, bowing slightly to say thanks. Dad stayed silent. The conversation started with small talk. Mum asked what Michael did for work. He said he worked for a small tech company, not much money, but steady. Mum asked where his family was. He said his parents were in California. He moved to Texas for work. Mum asked if he was religious. He hesitated, then said his family was Buddhist, but he respected all religions. Mum nodded, saying nothing. An hour passed. Michael answered every question. He didn't avoid anything. He looked straight at Mum when he spoke, even though his hands still shook every time he put down his teacup. Then Dad, who hadn't said a word the whole time, put down his newspaper. Everyone went silent. Dad looked at Michael. Michael looked back at Dad. I held my breath. "I only want one thing," Dad said. His voice was deep and slow. "I just want my daughter to be happy." Michael nodded firmly. "I understand," he said. Dad looked at him for another long moment. Then he picked up his newspaper, opened it, and kept reading. The conversation ended there. When Michael left, I walked him to the door. The afternoon sun cast pale yellow light on the street in front of the house. He stopped on the porch and turned to me. He reached out and gently took my bandaged hand. His thumb brushed softly over the white gauze. "I'm sorry for all of this," he said. His eyes stared at my wound, like he could see through the bandage to the pain underneath. I shook my head. "You showing up here is enough." He looked up at me. In his eyes, I saw my reflection. A girl with a bandaged hand, hair blowing in the evening wind, eyes a little red, but smiling. He pulled me close, hugged me gently, like he was afraid I'd break. "Thank you," he whispered in my ear, "for not giving up." I closed my eyes. In his arms, I felt warm. I felt like everything would be okay. I didn't know that the price for that belief would be 7 years of my life. That night, I lay in my old bed in my old room. The room was exactly like it was in high school. Light pink walls, pictures of friends taped to the desk, the small bookcase full of books. Everything so familiar. But I felt different. I felt relieved, at peace. I stared at the ceiling. In the darkness, I smiled. "So it's done," I whispered to myself. "I can be happy now." Outside, wind blew softly through the window crack. In the distance, a dog barked. All the sounds were normal, peaceful. But in the next room, the living room where Aunt Patricia was staying over tonight, someone was whispering. Aunt Patricia sat on the couch, phone wedged between her ear and shoulder. The light from the screen lit up her face, showing a small smile. "She still loves that guy," she whispered into the phone. "See, I told you." On the other end, someone sighed, then hung up. Aunt Patricia put down the phone, looking toward the stairs leading to my room. Her eyes darkened. Then she turned off the light, lay down on the couch, and stared at the dark ceiling. Upstairs, I was still smiling, still thinking about Michael, still believing everything would work out. I didn't know that downstairs someone was whispering things I wasn't supposed to hear. Chapter 4. 7 years, a proposal, and some pictures. 7 years. 7 years since that night the door slammed on my hand. 7 years since those "Mum loves you and you're destroying this family" texts. 7 years since Michael came to my house, hands shaking, holding that fruit box, and my dad said just one thing: "I just want my daughter to be happy." Today I'm 31 years old, and I'm standing in the little park where we used to date in the beginning. Michael is on his knees in front of me. It's late fall. Yellow leaves cover the grass. He's wearing a white shirt and black pants, exactly like that day he came to meet my parents 7 years ago. In his hand is a small black velvet box. When he opens it, the ring sparkles in the afternoon sun. The diamond is tiny, not expensive, but it's enough to make my eyes go blurry. "Sarah," he says. His voice shakes just like 7 years ago. "Will you marry me?" I cry. I can't stop the tears. They pour down my face, blurring his face in front of me. I nod over and over, unable to say anything. He stands up, slides the ring onto my finger, the finger that got hurt, the scar still faint in the sunlight. Then he hugs me so tight I can hear his heart pounding in his chest. In the distance, my parents stand under the old oak tree. Mum wipes her tears. Dad has his hands in his pockets, watching us with a look I can't read. Maybe happy, maybe worried, maybe both. Then Mum walks over. She looks at Michael for a long time, then at me. "Congratulations," she says. Her voice isn't really warm, but it's not cold either. She's accepted it. For me, she's accepted. I hug Mum, and in that moment, I think everything will be okay. Our wedding was small, just both families and a few close friends. Emma was my maid of honor, cried more than I did. My mother-in-law, a tiny, quiet Chinese woman, held my hand and said, "Take care of my son." I nodded. I would take care of him, I promised. For our honeymoon, we went to the beach. 5 short days at a small resort, lying on the sand, listening to the waves, watching Michael smile. I thought my life was complete. I didn't know that during those very days, Michael got an email saying he'd lost his job. 3 months after the wedding, I stood at the register of a small restaurant holding my credit card. My face burned as the cashier shook her head, saying the card was declined. I tried another card, declined too. "Mom, do you have cash?" the cashier asked, looking at me with pity. I dug through my purse. I had just enough cash to pay for dinner. When I walked out of the restaurant, I stood frozen on the sidewalk, still holding those 2 declined cards. That night, I asked Michael. "I just forgot to pay the bill," he laughed it off. "Been busy lately. I'll transfer money tomorrow." I nodded. I believed him. But then I found out he'd lost his job during our honeymoon. 3 months now he hadn't been working. He said he was applying for jobs, doing interviews, waiting to hear back. I started working extra hours at the coffee shop. I took night shifts, weekend shifts. My paycheck paid the bills, the rent, the groceries. Every night I came home, Michael was on the couch watching TV, dishes piled up in the sink, dirty clothes on the floor. He'd look at me and smile. "You're home, babe? How was your day?" I'd say fine, then go wash the dishes. After that, I'd cook for the next day. Then I'd go to sleep, next to the man who promised to make me happy. Once I asked him, "Did you send out any job applications?" "Yeah," he said. "Sent out like 10. I didn't ask more. But one night, when he was in the shower, I opened his laptop. His sent emails folder was empty. No job applications. No emails to any employers. I closed the laptop and stayed quiet. I told myself, he's going through a hard time. I need to be patient. One night in October, Cold wind blew through the window cracks. Michael went to bed early, said he was tired. I was in the living room, cleaning up the dinner dishes. He'd eaten and left everything on the table, like always. I wiped the table, put away chairs. Then I saw his phone on the coffee table. The screen lit up. A text from an unknown number. "Did you have fun last night?" My heart stopped. I stared at those words. Last night? Last night he said he had a job interview. I got home at 9, he wasn't back yet. He got home at 10, said the interview ran long. Then he had coffee with a friend. I picked up the phone. My hands shook. I knew I shouldn't do this, but I couldn't stop myself. Lock screen. I tried his birthday. Wrong, my birthday. It opened. I went to his messages. Dozen of texts from unknown numbers, dozens of pictures. Naked women, not photos of him with them. Pictures saved from the internet, from social media. Girls with perfect bodies, in sexy poses. He'd saved them in his phone, in a folder labeled Work. I scrolled up, scrolled down. Hundreds of them. Saved from months ago, from before we got married, from our honeymoon days, from when he was unemployed. My hands shook so bad I almost dropped the phone. I put it down on the table, stood up, then picked it up again, looked again. Like maybe if I looked one more time, the pictures would disappear. They didn't disappear. I went to the bedroom. Michael lay in bed, his back to me, breathing evenly. I shook him awake. Huh? What? He rubbed his eyes, sat up. I held the phone in front of his face. The screen was bright, a picture showing. What is this? Michael looked at the screen. He blinked, then looked at me. His face didn't change at all. No shock, no shame, no panic. He looked at me like I'd asked the most normal question ever. So, he said, all guys do this. I froze. I stood there, in the middle of our bedroom, holding my husband's phone, looking at the man I'd loved for 7 years. The man I'd suffered for, the man I'd left home for, the man I'd fought my mother for, staring back at me with no guilt at all. All guys do this, he repeated. They're just pictures. Why are you making a big deal? My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I turned and walked out of the room. I sat on the living room couch, staring into the dark. His phone was still in my hand. I looked at the screen. The pictures were still there, those strange girls with perfect bodies in poses I could never do. Footsteps from the bedroom, then the door closings. He didn't come out to talk. He stayed in the room and closed the door. I sat there until morning. When dawn broke, I finally went back in. Michael was fast asleep, his back to me, just like every night. I lay down next to him. We were an arm's length apart, but it felt farther than any distance I'd ever known. I turned my back to my husband. Morning light crept through the curtain crack, falling on my hand. My middle finger, the one that got hurt, the scar was still there, faint in the new sunlight. A small white line where the nail had popped off and grown back. I looked at that scar for a long time, and I thought, I've suffered for him, literally and figuratively. 7 years ago, my mother slammed the door on my hand because she wouldn't accept him. I took the pain. I accepted the scar because I thought he was worth it. Now, looking at that scar, looking at the man sleeping next to me, I wondered, what did I suffer for? Outside, the Texas city was waking up. Traffic noise started filling the air. A new day was beginning. I closed my eyes, but I knew I wouldn't sleep. Not tonight. And, maybe, not the nights after either. Chapter 5. The Forgiveness Loop. I'm sorry. Those 2 words echoed in the small living room. Michael sat on the couch, head in his hands, not looking at me. On the coffee table, his phone was still open. The pictures still there, those girls still smiling at me from the screen. I stood against the wall, arms crossed. My hands shook, but I tried to hide it. I'll delete them all, Michael said. He looked up at me, eyes red. I promise, I'll never do it again. I looked at him. 7 years. 7 years I'd loved this man. 7 years I'd suffered for him. 7 years I'd believed he was the only one for me. I promise, he said again, his voice pleading. Sarah, I love you. They're just stupid pictures. Every guy messes up sometimes. I took a deep breath. Everyone makes mistakes, I whispered, like I was telling myself. Michael stood up, walked over to me. He hugged me, buried his face in my hair. Thank you, he said. "Thank you for forgiving me." I stood still in his arms. I didn't hug him back. I wanted to believe. I really, really wanted to believe. 1 month later, I came home from work early. Emma was sick, so I covered her shift and got off at 5 instead of 8. The apartment was quiet when I opened the door. "Michael," I called. No answer. I went to the bedroom. Michael lay on the bed, fast asleep, his phone on the pillow next to his head. The screen was lit. I walked closer. I looked again. More pictures. I stood there, looking at those strange girls, those familiar poses, the way he saved them in his work folder like it was normal. I didn't wake him up. I went to the living room, sat on the couch, and waited. 2 hours later, Michael woke up. He walked out, rubbing his eyes, then froze when he saw me sitting there. "You're home early," he said. "Why did you do it?" He was quiet. I stood up, looked straight into his eyes. "Why did you do it, Michael? You promised me. You said you wouldn't do it again." Michael sighed. He pulled out a chair at the kitchen table, ran his hands through his hair. "I don't know," he said. "I'm bored. Work is stressful. I don't know." I felt blood rush to my face. "I'm stressed too," I said. My voice got higher, shakier. "I come home from work, cook dinner, clean the house, pay the bills. Do you ever hear me complain?" Michael was quiet. "I come home, see you watching TV, dishes piled up, clothes on the floor. Do I complain? I still do everything because I love you, because I think you're going through a hard time." I stepped closer to him. "And you say you're stressed, you're bored, so you look at those pictures." Michael looked up at me. His eyes were empty. "I'm sorry," he said. Those 2 words, again. I turned away. The 3rd time I found out after 2 months. The 4th time, after 3 weeks. The 5th time, after 1 week. The 5th time I stood in the bathroom at 2 in the morning, looking in the mirror. My face was pale, dark circles under my eyes. I'd run out of tears by the 3rd time. I walked back to the bedroom. Michael was awake, staring at the ceiling. "Michael," I said. He turned to me. "Why do you keep hurting me?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he sat up, leaning against the headboard. "If you knew I'd keep doing it," he said calmly, "why do you keep forgiving me?" I was speechless. That question hit me like a knife in the chest. I stood there, mouth open, no words coming out. Michael looked at me, eyes still empty. "You choose to stay," he continued. "Don't blame me." I felt like someone had slapped me. "Don't blame him. I choose to stay. He's not wrong. He's never wrong. He just does what he wants, and me. I'm the one who chooses to stay, chooses to suffer, chooses to believe promises that will never be kept." I turned and walked to the bathroom. I closed the door, locked it. I turned on the shower. Hot water poured down, steam filled the room. I sat on the cold tile floor, pulled my knees to my chest, buried my face. Water ran. I didn't know if it was water or tears on my face. Maybe both. I looked down at my hands. The hands that got slammed in a door. The scar on my middle finger was still there, faint in the bathroom light. The hands that cooked him hundreds of meals. The hands that washed his clothes. The hands that wiped my own tears. Those long nights lying next to him crying silently. Those hands now shaking under the hot water. "When will I have had enough?" I whispered. The rushing water drowned out my voice. "When will I hurt enough to leave? When will I be tired enough to stop believing? When will I be clear-headed enough to see he will never change?" I sat under the shower until the water ran cold, until the steam disappeared, until my fingers got pruny from being in the water too long. When I came out, Michael was asleep. He lay on his side, back to me, breathing evenly. I lay down next to him. The distance between us, an arm's length, but it felt farther than an ocean. The next morning I woke up first. I went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror. My eyes had dark circles, purple like someone had punched me. My lips were chapped and dry. My skin was grey, lifeless. I looked at the woman in the mirror. Someone who used to smile a lot. Someone who used to believe in love. Someone who thought that if you loved enough, everything would be okay. The woman in the mirror now looked back at me with stranger's eyes. "You love him too much," I whispered to her, "so you don't know how to leave him." The woman in the mirror looked at me, eyes red, saying nothing. I turned on the faucet, washed my face. The cold water woke me up a little. I looked down at my hands, the hands with the faint scar. The scar from 7 years ago. The scar from the first time I suffered for love. I never thought that 7 years later I'd still be suffering for the same love, for the same man. But this time the wound wasn't on my hand. It was in my chest where I couldn't bandage it, couldn't wash it clean, couldn't see it. It kept bleeding every day, every night, every time I saw those pictures, every time I heard those promises, every time I lay next to him and wondered, when will I have had enough? I walked out of the bathroom. Michael was still asleep. I went to the kitchen, made coffee, looked out the window. Texas sky was still blue, sun still yellow, life still going on. I drank my coffee, hands shaking around the cup. And I wondered, today, will I forgive him again? Chapter 6, Bleeding Eyes. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 5 a.m, looking at my eyes. The dark circles had turned purple. My face was grey. I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept well. Every night I lay next to Michael, staring at the ceiling, listening to him snore, wondering, how much longer can I take this? That morning I told him while he was drinking coffee. What if I quit my job? Michael looked up, frowning. I can't take it anymore, I continued. My voice was hoarse, tired. My manager is so picky, my co-workers are mean, I'm exhausted. No way. Michael put his coffee cup down a little too hard. I don't make enough. If you quit, how will we pay the bills? But I'm exhausted, I repeated. I can't keep going. Then find another job, he said. Don't quit until you have something else. I looked at him. He didn't look at me. He picked up his phone, scrolled, face blank. That day I went to work, and that day I put in my notice. When I got home and told Michael, he said nothing. He looked at me for a long time, then turned away, went to the bedroom and closed the door. 3 days. 3 days he didn't talk to me. He came and went, scrolled his phone, watched TV, but didn't look at me, didn't ask me anything, didn't touch me. Those 3 days I sat in the living room, staring at that closed bedroom door, wondering, did I make a mistake marrying this man? 1 month after I quit my job, I lay in bed burning up. It felt like someone was pouring fire into my bones. Sweat soaked my clothes, soaked the sheets. I'd shake from cold, then burn with heat. Michael came home from work, saw me lying there, and just asked, "You're sick?" I nodded, unable to speak. He went to the kitchen, made himself noodles. I heard the water boil, dishes clatter, then him watching TV in the living room. I lay there, feverish, wondering why he didn't come ask if I needed anything. 3 days later, I couldn't take it anymore. Emma had to come and take me to the emergency room. Michael was at work, didn't know. I texted him, "I'm in the hospital." He replied, "Okay, I'll come by tonight." The hospital room was white. White walls, white sheets, white doctor coats. I lay there staring at the white ceiling, listening to the beep, beep of the heart monitor. The doctors ran all the tests, blood work, x-rays, MRI. They asked me everything. Was I coughing? Did I have headaches? Was I eating okay? Did I have any medical history? I answered everything, but I didn't tell them the most important thing. My heart had been hurting for 7 years, and it had never stopped. 5 days in the hospital, fever up, fever down. Sometimes I thought I was going to die. Then one morning I woke up and my vision was blurry. I rubbed my eyes, wet. I looked at my hand, red. Blood. My eyes were bleeding. I shot up, ran to the bathroom. In the mirror, I saw my eyes. The whites were blood red, blood dripping from the corners, running down my cheeks, my chin. I looked like a ghost. I screamed. Nurses ran in. Doctors ran in. They laid me down, shone lights in my eyes, used cotton to wipe the blood. I lay there, shaking, not understanding what was happening. Only one thought in my head, I'm going to die. My dad got the news within an hour. He came to the hospital in the rain. His coat was soaked, his hair was soaked, but he didn't care. He ran into my room, looking at me with red eyes. His eyes, not mine. "My girl," he said, his voice shaking. "Dad's here with you." He pulled up a chair next to my bed. He held my hand. His hands were rough, calloused from years as an electrician, but they were warm. So warm. I cried. I couldn't help it. tears mixed with the blood still seeping from my eyes, soaking the gauze. Dad didn't say anything. He just sat there holding my hand, wiping my tears with an old handkerchief. Michael came in the evening. He walked in, looked around the room, then plopped down on the sofa in the corner. "Why is this couch so hard?" he complained. "My back hurts." I looked at him. He was rubbing his back, face all scrunched up. I looked at my dad. He was sitting straight up on that hard plastic chair, still holding my hand. Dad didn't complain. He'd been sitting there since afternoon. He helped me to the bathroom. He bought food I liked. He told me stories. Old stories about when I was little, about the times I fell off my bike, about the times I cried over bad grades. Michael lay on the couch, scrolling his phone. One night, I woke up at midnight. The room lights were off, just a dim glow from the hallway. I looked around. Michael was on the couch, asleep. His face was scrunched up, arm under his head, body curled up because the couch was too short, too hard. My dad sat by my bed. His head was down, eyes closed, but his hand was still holding mine. He was sleeping like that, uncomfortable, not easy, but he wouldn't let go. I looked at the two men in the room. One gave me life, one I chose. One was willing to hurt, to be with me. One was only with me when it didn't hurt. One held my hand all night, even as his hand went numb. One lay on the couch complaining about his back. My tears flowed again. This time no blood, just tears. I looked at my dad, the quiet man, who all his life just worked and showed love through actions. He never said many loving words, but he was always there. When I hurt, he hurt with me. When I cried, he was there to wipe my tears. Then I looked at Michael, the man I traded my family for, the man I suffered for, the man I'd forgiven so many times. He lay there on the couch, sleeping peacefully, not knowing his wife had just woken up, was crying, was looking at him and realizing a painful truth. I turned back to my dad. I squeezed his hand gently. Dad opened his eyes, looked at me. "What's wrong?" he asked, voice still sleepy. "Are you in pain?" I shook my head. "I just wanted to look at you." Dad looked at me for a moment, then nodded. He didn't ask anything else. He just sat back, still holding my hand, and closed his eyes again. I stared at the white ceiling. And I wondered, "Dad, why did I choose so wrong?" The next morning, the doctor came in. He held a stack of test results, looking at me with a serious face. "Ms. Thompson," he said, "we've run all the tests. No signs of infection, no tumours, no eye disease." I looked at him, confused. "Then why are my eyes bleeding?" The doctor sat down, put the papers on the table. "Your body is reacting to long-term stress," he said. "Bleeding eyes is a sign of extreme pressure. It's like a safety valve bursting. Your body can't take any more." I was quiet. "Are you under a lot of stress?" the doctor asked. "Work? Family? Marriage?" I looked out the window. Golden sunlight poured into the room. Outside, the Texas sky was clear blue. Phew, not a cloud, a beautiful day. "Ms. Thompson?" the doctor called. I turned back to him. "If you don't change your life," he said, "next time it might not just be bleeding eyes. It could be a stroke, a heart attack. Your body is warning you." I nodded. "Thank you, doctor," I said. The doctor stood up and walked out. The door closed softly behind him. I looked out the window again. The sun was still golden. The sky was still blue. Life was still beautiful. And I thought, I'm dying from loving him. I looked down at my hands, the hands with that faint scar on my middle finger. The scar from 7 years ago, when my mother slammed the door on my hand because she wouldn't accept Michael. 7 years later, I'm in the hospital, my eyes bleeding, my body broken because of that same man. And I wondered, maybe I should have let her break my hand that day. Maybe then I wouldn't hurt so much now. Chapter 7. More pictures. Painting. The pancake. I left the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon. Dad picked me up. He drove slower than usual, glancing at me in the rearview mirror now and then. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, not saying anything. The sky was still blue. People were still going to work, going to the store, picking up their kids. Life kept going, like nothing had happened. When the car stopped in front of my apartment, Dad asked, "Want me to come up with you?" I shook my head. "I'm okay, Dad." Dad looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Call me if you need anything." I got out of the car and walked into the building. In the elevator, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were still a little red, the dark circles still there. I looked like a ghost of myself. Michael came home from work at 7 that night. He opened the door, saw me sitting on the couch, and just nodded. "You're back?" "Yeah," I said. He went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, took out food to heat up. I heard the microwave humming. Then he brought a bowl of noodles to the living room, sat down, and ate while watching TV. I stayed on the couch, looking at the screen but not watching. We didn't say a word to each other. 20 minutes later, he finished eating, put the bowl on the table and went to the bedroom. 10 minutes after that, I heard him snoring. I kept sitting there, staring at the darkness outside the window, and I wondered, do I even feel anything anymore? The answer, no, nothing at all. A week later, I started cleaning the apartment. During my days in the hospital, everything had gotten dusty. I wiped the tables, the cabinets, vacuumed the floor. Then I went to the bedroom to change the sheets. Michael was at work. The room was quiet. I pulled off the old sheets, put on new ones. When I reached for the pillows, I saw his phone on the bed. He'd forgotten it. I picked it up. The screen was dark, but I knew the password. I'd memorized it a long time ago. I stood there looking at the phone in my hand. In my head, one voice whispered, "Don't open it. You know what you'll find." Another voice, "But you need to know, so you can figure out what to do." I stood still for a long time. Outside, traffic noise filled the air. Inside, my heart beat, slow, steady like a machine running out of battery. Then I unlocked it. I went to his photo folder. I went to his messages. And I saw them. New pictures. Saved from 2 days ago. Just 3 days after I got out of the hospital. Different girls. Different bodies. Strange faces. I stood there looking at them and felt nothing. No pain, no anger, no sadness, nothing. I just stood there, looking like I was looking at some stranger's photos. Like it had nothing to do with me. I put the phone back on the bed, exactly where I'd found it. Then I went back to cleaning the living room. That evening, Michael came home. He went to the bedroom to change, then came to the living room and sat on the couch. I was cooking in the kitchen. I turned off the stove, walked out, holding his phone. "Here," I said, handing it to him. "You left it on the bed." Michael took it, looking at me. His eyes narrowed slightly. I looked back at him. Then I said, "Again." He was quiet. 1 second, 2 seconds. "Yeah," he said. I waited. I didn't know what I was waiting for. An apology, an explanation, something. But no, he just said yeah, like I'd said it's hot today. "You have nothing to say?" I asked. Michael looked at me, his face blank. "What do you want me to say? I already told you, I'm a man. All guys do this." That line again. How many times had I heard it? The first time, it was like a knife. The second time, like a cut. The third time, like a bruise. The fourth time, like a slap. The fifth time, like a bucket of cold water. And now, it was just white noise, like a fan humming, like traffic outside. I stood there, looking at him, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "All guys do this," I repeated, my voice flat. "How many times have you said that?" Michael didn't answer. He looked at the floor. I was about to turn away, to go back to the kitchen, finish dinner, eat, wash dishes, go to sleep, wake up, and keep going through this endless loop. But then he spoke. "Maybe we should just get a divorce." I froze. I turned back to look at him. He was still on the couch, hands on his knees, staring at the floor. Those words echoed in my head over and over like someone ringing a bell in my ear. "Divorce?" He said it first. He was the one who said it first. "You want a divorce?" I asked. My voice was hoarse, strange. Michael looked up at me. His eyes were empty. "You're not happy," he said. "Me neither. Let's just stop." I looked at him. That face, I'd looked at it for 7 years. I'd woken up next to it, gone to sleep next to it, cried over it, laughed because of it, traded my family for it. Now it felt completely foreign. I looked into his eyes and I saw nothing. No love, no regret, no sadness, Nothing. I realized I never really knew this man. I loved a shadow, an illusion, a story I'd been telling myself for 7 years. That 24-year-old girl back then, she saw Michael through rose-colored glasses. She thought love could fix everything. She thought if you loved enough, everything would be okay. She was wrong. I looked at the man in front of me, the man who just asked for a divorce, and I saw how stupid I'd been. 7 years. 7 years I waited for him to change. 7 years I convinced myself he'd get better. 7 years I suffered. From my slammed finger, from nights of silent crying, from bleeding eyes, all of it ending with a "let's just stop" from his own mouth. "Okay," I said. My voice was light, like I'd just agreed to buy a loaf of bread. "Divorce." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see his face again. I went straight to the bedroom, our bedroom, and closed the door. And then I slid down to the floor. My back against the cold door, my hands covering my face, and I cried. This time I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for 7 years of my life. I was crying for that 24-year-old girl. She stood in front of her mother and said, "I love him," with all the faith of youth. She let a door slam on her hand, let her finger bleed because she believed love was everything. I was crying for that slammed finger, the scar still there, faint on my skin. It would be there forever, reminding me of what I'd paid for this love. I was crying for my bleeding eyes, for the sleepless nights, for the exhausted days, for a body that screamed warnings I wouldn't hear. I was crying for every time I forgave, every time I believed, every time I told myself, he'll change. He wouldn't change. He never changed. And me, I'd wasted 7 years realizing that. Outside, I heard Michael open the door, then close it. He went somewhere. I didn't know. I didn't care. I sat there against the door, crying until I had no tears left. In the darkness of the room, I looked down at my hand, the middle finger with the faint scar. I raised it, gently touched it. "I'm sorry," I whispered to that finger. "I'm sorry you had to hurt." Then I whispered to that 24-year-old girl inside me. "I'm sorry I let you believe in a dream that wasn't real." Outside, rain started falling. I heard it tapping on the roof. Patter, patter. I stayed there, against the door in the dark. And I knew tomorrow morning when I woke up I'd be someone else. No longer Michael Chen's wife. No longer the girl who believed in blind love. I'd be Sarah, just Sarah. But right now I still needed to cry a little more. For the days that passed, for the wounds I'd carried, for that 24-year-old girl, now 31, who'd learned the most expensive lesson of her life. Chapter 8, looking back at 7 years. Emma was the first person I called. She answered after a few rings, her voice still sleepy. I forgot it was 10 at night. She gets home late from work and goes to bed early. "Sarah?" She sat up fast. I heard the bed creak. "What's wrong?" "I'm getting a divorce," I said. Silence. Emma didn't ask why. She didn't ask, "Are you sure?" She just was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm coming over." "No need, I'm okay." "I didn't ask if you're okay," Emma said. "I said I'm coming." I laughed, first time in who knows how long. "Okay," I said, "but come tomorrow. Tonight I'm going to my parents' house." Emma was quiet another moment. Then she said, "Call me anytime." "Okay." I hung up, sitting on the couch staring into the dark. Michael still wasn't back. Where he'd gone after I went to the room, I didn't know. I didn't ask. I didn't care. I called my mum. She answered right away like she'd been waiting for the phone to ring. "Sarah, what's wrong? It's late. What happened?" "I'm getting a divorce, Mom." Silence. I heard Mum breathing on the other end, shallow and fast. I waited. I waited for, "I told you so," for you should have listened to me, for I knew it. But no. "Come home, baby," Mum said. Her voice was hoarse like she'd been crying. "Come home to me." I burst into tears. 2 hours later, I stood in front of the white house with the old wooden fence. The living room light was still on. Through the window, I saw Mum pacing back and forth, saw Dad sitting still on the couch. I pushed the door open. Mum ran and hugged me the second I stepped inside. She held me tight, so tight I could barely breathe. But I didn't want to let go. I buried my face in her shoulder, crying like a little kid. "You're home," Mum whispered. You're home with me. Dad stood up and walked over. He didn't say anything, just put his hand on my shoulder and patted gently. One small pat, but I felt everything in it. I cried for a long time. My room was exactly the same. I stood in the middle looking around. Light pink walls, the color I picked when I was 15. On my desk, a picture of me at high school graduation, wearing a blue gown, holding my diploma, smiling huge. My eyes in that picture were so bright, like the whole world was waiting for me. I looked at that girl in the photo. She was 22, hadn't met Michael yet. Didn't know what pain was. I reached out and gently touched the glass. You don't know how lucky you are, I whispered to her. Then I sat on the bed, hugged my old pillow, and stared out the window all night. The next morning, Mom came into my room. She sat down next to me, looked at me for a long time. Then she took my hand, my right hand, the one with the faint scar on my middle finger. That finger. The finger she'd hurt. I'm sorry, Mum said. I looked up at her. Mum's eyes were red, her lips pressed together like she was holding something back. That day, I didn't mean to hurt you, Mum continued. I lost my temper. I was scared. Scared you'd make the wrong choice, scared you'd suffer. And then you did leave. Tears started falling from my eyes. But I'm sorry, Mum said. Not just for the door. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you the right way. All I knew was saying no, yelling. I never learned how to listen. So you ended up choosing wrong. It's not your fault, I said. Part of it is, Mom said. I didn't give you space to choose for yourself, so you never learned how to choose right. I looked at Mom. She'd aged so much in 7 years, more grey in her hair, deeper wrinkles around her eyes. Ma, I said, I'm sorry. Mom shook her head. No, you have nothing to be sorry for. You just loved the wrong person. Everyone loves the wrong person sometimes. She hugged me, and I cried in her arms. For the first time in 7 years, I cried without it hurting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the past 7 years. I remembered the first time I met Michael, at a coffee shop near school. He spilled coffee on me, got all flustered apologizing, bought me another cup. I thought he was cute. I remembered our first dates, movies, walks in the park, talking until late. He told me about his family, about the pressure to succeed, about his failures. I felt for him. I remembered that night Mum slammed the door on my hand. I remembered the come home texts. I remembered the first time Michael came to meet my parents, hands shaking holding that fruit box, his shirt neatly ironed. I remembered the proposal. Him on his knees under that tree, afternoon sun all golden, me crying with happiness. I remembered every time I found pictures, first time, second time, fifth time. I remembered all guys do this, echoing in my head each time. I remembered my eyes bleeding, remembered Dad sitting by my hospital bed, holding my hand all night. I remembered maybe we should just get a divorce from his own mouth. And I realized something. I didn't love Michael. I loved the idea of Michael. I loved how he came to meet my parents, even though he was scared. I loved the hug the night I left home. I loved the beautiful moments, the rare times he made me laugh, the rare times he looked at me with gentle eyes. But the real him, the selfish, careless man who didn't know how to love, I never really saw him. Or maybe I did see him, but I chose not to look. I convinced myself he would change. I convinced myself if I loved enough, everything would be okay. I was wrong. And that mistake cost me 7 years of my life. The next morning, I opened my laptop. I sat at my old desk, the one from high school, and started typing. My fingers shook on the keyboard, but I kept typing. I wrote about the door, about that dry cracking sound, about blood on the floor. I wrote about 7 years, about every time I forgave, about every time I convinced myself. I wrote about my bleeding eyes, about what the doctor said, your body is reacting to long-term stress. I wrote about let's just get a divorce from his own mouth. I wrote for a long time. Tears fell, wetting my face, wetting my shirt, but I kept typing. When I finished, I read it over, a long post, longer than anything I'd ever written. It wasn't good, wasn't polished, just messy words straight from my heart. I copied it, pasted it into an anonymous confession page, one I'd found online where people share their stories. I hit post. Then I closed my laptop, lay down on my bed, and stared at the ceiling. I didn't know that post would change my life. 3 days later, my phone rang. An unknown number. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, a text appeared. "Are you Sarah? I read your post. I'm in the same situation as you. I want to ask, how do you get out?" My heart stopped. I stared at those words. A stranger, some woman suffering like me, stuck in the same forgiveness loop, wondering how to escape. My hands shook. I thought about my 7 years, about all the times I wished someone had told me, "You can get out, you deserve to be happy." I typed back, "Do you want to meet?" I hit send, then I put the phone down and looked out the window. Outside, golden sunlight stretched down the street. A new day was beginning. And I felt, for the first time in 7 years, a tiny spark of hope. Small, fragile, but real. I didn't know who that woman was. I didn't know how the meeting would go. But I knew one thing. If someone had helped me 7 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have gone through all of this. And if I could help just one person, then my 7 years, the pain, the tears, the scars, wouldn't be completely wasted. I looked down at my hand, the middle finger with the faint scar. The scar from the first day I suffered for love. But also the scar that reminded me I survived. I survived everything. And now I would learn to live for myself. Chapter 9, The Other Women. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop near the university. I got there 15 minutes early. Sat in the corner, ordered a black coffee, looked out the window. Late fall, yellow leaves covering the sidewalk. Students walking by, laughing, carefree. I watched them and remembered myself 7 years ago. Young, carefree too, thinking the whole world was waiting for me. The coffee shop door opened and a girl walked in. She was young, I guess 25, 26. Long brown hair, big eyes, wearing a cream-coloured sweater and jeans. She stood at the door, looked around, then her eyes stopped on me. I raised my hand. She walked over and sat down across from me. Her hands shook as she put her bag on the table. "Are you Sarah?" she asked. Her voice was soft, a little shaky. "Yeah, and you're Jessica?" She nodded. Then she looked at me for a long time, like she was searching for something in my face. "I read your post," Jessica said. "I read it 3 times, and I realized your story is so much like mine." I stayed quiet, waiting for her to continue. "He has pictures on his phone too," Jessica said. "I found them a few times. He says old friends send random stuff. He doesn't delete because he doesn't think it's a big deal. Then he promises not to do it again. Then he does it again." My heart started beating faster. "He makes me feel weak," Jessica continued, looking down at the table. "He says I'm the only one, but then I find more pictures. When I ask, he says I'm controlling, that I don't trust him. I wonder, is it me? Am I not good enough?" That line hit me like a knife in the heart. "How long?" I asked. 2 years, Jessica said. "I've loved him for 2 years." I took a deep breath. "Jessica," I said, "what's his name?" Jessica looked up at me. Her eyes narrowed slightly, like she was hesitating. "His name is Michael," she said. "Michael Chen." I froze. Even though I'd prepared myself, even though I'd thought about this possibility. But hearing that name from this young woman sitting in front of me, it still felt like someone dumped ice water over me. "What's wrong?" Jessica asked, eyes wide. "Do you know him?" I looked at her. Her young face, her eyes still full of belief, still hoping love could fix everything. "I used to be like that." "Michael Chen," I said, my voice flat. "My ex-husband." Jessica's face went pale. "What?" "We just got divorced," I said, "less than a month ago." Jessica stared at me, mouth open but no words coming out. "Do you have a picture of him?" I asked. Jessica pulled out her phone, hands shaking, opened her photos and handed it to me. I looked at the screen. Michael smiling in the photo, arm around Jessica's shoulder, both of them standing by a lake. I recognized that place, the park where he proposed to me. "When was this taken?" I asked. 2 months ago, Jessica said. Her voice was tiny. 2 months ago. I'd just gotten out of the hospital then. My eyes were still red from bleeding. I was home, exhausted, and Michael came home late, said he was busy with work. He told me, Jessica said, tears starting to fall. He told me he was getting divorced soon. Said his wife didn't understand him, was always stressed, always sick. Said he needed someone who really understood him. I sat and listened. Those words, every single one, like needles poking my ears. He said I was special, Jessica cried. He said I was different from everyone else. He said he'd be with me forever. I watched her cry. And I saw myself 7 years ago, sitting in a coffee shop, crying over Michael, believing he really loved me. My hands clenched under the table, my nails dug into my palms, sharp pain. But that pain was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. Not ache for Michael, ache for the girl in front of me. Jessica, I said, do you want to know the truth about him? Jessica looked up at me, eyes wet with tears. I don't know, she said. I'm scared. I understand, I said. I was scared too, but trust me, better to know early than late. I learned too late, 7 years too late. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I want to know, I told her. I told her about the first time I found pictures. About all guys do this. About every time I forgave. Every time I believed. Every time he did it again. I told her about nights I cried silently next to him. About days I worked myself to exhaustion paying bills. About him saying, if you knew I'd keep doing it, why do you keep forgiving me? I told her about my eyes bleeding. About days in the hospital. About him sitting on the couch in my hospital room complaining about his back hurting. I told her about maybe we should just get a divorce from his own mouth. Jessica listened, tears streaming down her face. She didn't wipe them, just let them run down her cheeks, her chin, dropping onto the table. When I finished, she sat still for a very long time. He told me, Jessica said, her voice raw. When I asked about the pictures on his phone, he said old friends sent them. He said I was paranoid, controlling. I wondered, is it me? Am I not good enough? Am I asking too much? I reached across the table and took her hand. It's not you, I said. It's him. He will never change. I waited 7 years to learn that. Jessica looked at me, eyes red. Do you hate him? She asked. I thought for a moment. Yes, I said. I hate the 7 years of my life. I hate the sleepless nights. I hate my eyes that bled. I hate this finger that got hurt because I fought my mother to love him. I paused. But I don't hate him, I continued. Hate means you still feel something. I feel nothing. Jessica looked at me. Then she burst into sobs, crying like a little kid. I sat there, holding her hand, not saying anything, letting her cry it all out. Outside, the sun was starting to set. Golden light painted the street, warming the coffee shop with soft rays. When Jessica stopped crying, she looked at me. What do I do now? She asked. You're young, I said. You're only 26. Your whole life is ahead of you. Don't be like me. Don't waste 7 years waiting for someone who isn't worth it. Jessica nodded, wiping her tears. Tomorrow morning, she said. I'll talk to him. I'll end it. I smiled, a sad smile, but warm too. I believe in you, I said. Jessica looked at me for a long time. Thank you, she said. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for telling me your story. You're welcome, I said. I just wish someone had told me these things 7 years ago. We sat there a little longer, holding hands, looking out the window. The sun went down completely. Streetlights started coming on. Students still walked by, still laughing, still carefree. I looked at Jessica. Her face now looked different. No more confusion, no more self-blame. Instead, a glint of determination, a bit of strength. Sarah, Jessica said, and do you think maybe your story isn't just for you to suffer? I looked at her. Today, because of your story, I won't have to suffer like you, Jessica said. So your story means something. I heard those words, and something warm spread through my chest. Maybe she was right. Maybe my 7 years, the pain, the tears, the scars weren't completely wasted. Maybe it was all for today, to help one young woman avoid the path I walked. We left when it was fully dark. Outside the coffee shop, Jessica hugged me. A tight hug, like I was the sister she never had. Thank you, she whispered. Take care, I said. Remember, you deserve to be happy, and that happiness doesn't come from a man who makes you cry. Jessica nodded, smiling, her first smile of the night. I watched her disappear into the darkness. Then I looked up at the night sky. Thousands of stars sparkled, like tiny sparks of hope. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. And for the first time in 7 years, I felt I wasn't alone. Chapter 10. The Door Opens. The county courthouse sat in the middle of downtown, a white building with tall stone columns, looking serious and cold. I sat on a bench in the hallway waiting for our turn. Next to me was my lawyer, a woman about my age named Maria, recommended by Emma. Maria spoke softly, but I didn't hear what she said. I just stared at the courtroom door, thinking about other doors. 10 minutes later, Michael arrived. He walked into the hallway wearing a grey suit, the same outfit he wore on our wedding day. His hair was neat, face clean-shaven. He looked the same, still the man I used to love. He sat on a bench across from me about 10 feet away. His eyes looked at me for a moment, then dropped to the floor. We didn't say a word to each other. Our turn came. We went into the courtroom. The judge was an older man, white hair, glasses. He read through the papers, asked a few questions, then signed the documents. The whole thing took less than 15 minutes. When we came out, I stood in the hallway holding the divorce papers in my hand. Such a thin piece of paper, lighter than I expected. 7 years of my life, ending with one thin sheet. Michael came out behind me. He stopped, looking at me. "You okay?" he asked. I looked up at him. For the first time in 7 years, I looked at him and felt nothing in my chest. No pain, no anger, no love, no hate. Just empty. "Yeah," I said. Michael nodded. He put his hands in his pockets, looking at the floor. "I'm sorry about everything," he said. "Are you really sorry?" Michael was quiet. I looked at him, that familiar face now so strange, and I realized he didn't understand. He never understood. He said sorry because that's what people say when a marriage ends, not because he really understood what he'd done. "You can't really be sorry," I said, "because you don't understand what you did. But that's okay. I understand enough for both of us." I turned and walked away. Behind me, I didn't hear footsteps following. Outside the courthouse, I saw them. Mum and Dad standing under the old oak tree by the gate. Dad wore his old jacket, holding an umbrella. It wasn't raining, but Dad always carried one, just in case I needed it. Mum stood next to him, holding a bunch of sunflowers, my favorite flower. Emma stood beside them, eyes red, smiling at me. And Jessica. Jessica was there too, holding a little handmade sign, "Congrats on your freedom." I stood there looking at them, and I cried. Not crying from pain, crying because I realized I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I just hadn't seen them because I was always looking toward Michael. On the way home, Mum sat next to me in the back seat while Dad drove. She was quiet for a long time, then turned to look at me. "I need to tell you something," Mum said, "about Aunt Patricia." I looked at Mum. "I just found out," Mum said. "Back then, when she told me about you and Michael, it wasn't because she hated you. It was because she once loved someone outside our faith too." I froze. "Grandma forbade it," Mum continued. "Aunt Patricia was too scared to fight. She loved that man, but she didn't dare choose him. And then, he married someone else. She's lived with that regret her whole life." Mum took my hand. "So when she saw you do what she never dared, she got jealous. Jealous that you had the courage. And because of that jealousy, she ruined your happiness." I sat there, stunned. So the person who messed up my life was just a victim too. A victim of her own fear. A woman who didn't dare choose love and lived in regret forever. I didn't know how to feel. That afternoon, I went to Aunt Patricia's house. She opened the door, her face going pale when she saw me. She stood there, gripping the door handle like she was afraid I'd push her over. "I know," I said. Aunt Patricia was quiet. Her lips trembled, her eyes got red. "I'm not angry," I said. "I just feel sorry for you." Aunt Patricia burst into tears. She cried like a child. She sank down onto the doorstep, covering her face, sobbing. I sat down next to her, not saying anything, just putting my hand on her shoulder. She told me everything. about a man named Carlos, a Mexican guy not in our faith, who worked at an auto shop. She loved him when she was 19, loved him like crazy, but Grandma forbade it. Said she couldn't marry outside the faith, it would shame the family, she'd go to hell. Aunt Patricia didn't dare fight, she gave up. Carlos waited 2 years, then he married someone else. A Mexican woman who shared his faith, who was respectable, who was accepted by his family. Aunt Patricia lived with that regret for 30 years. "When I saw you dare to love Michael," she said, her voice raw, "I got jealous that you had the courage I didn't, and that jealousy, it made me ugly." I sat and listened, tears falling. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry I ruined your life because of my own jealousy." I hugged her. A long, tight hug. She cried in my arms, and I cried with her, not from pain, but from pity. Pity for her, for the woman who didn't dare choose love and lived in regret forever. That night I went home. It was fully dark. Streetlights glowed yellow, stars twinkled in the Texas sky. I stood at the gate, the white house with the old wooden fence, the big oak tree in front. The house I grew up in, where I'd cried, laughed, loved, hurt. I walked into the yard, up the steps, and I stood in front of the door. The dark brown wooden door, old and worn, with a scratch near the handle. The door that slammed on my hand 7 years ago, making my finger bleed, leaving a scar that was still there. I reached out and touched the wood. It was cold, smooth, old, an ordinary door like any other. But to me, it was part of my story. I looked down at my finger, the faint scar in the dim streetlight, the finger that got slammed, that bled, that hurt for days. Now it didn't hurt anymore. I opened the door. Not to leave like 7 years ago, but to step inside. To step into this house as a 31-year-old woman. Someone who'd loved, hurt, cried, bled from her eyes. Someone who'd forgiven too many times and finally learned to forgive herself. Someone who'd learned that loving yourself is the most important lesson. I sat by the living room window looking outside. The moon was bright tonight, a full round moon lighting up the whole yard. Wind blew gently, rustling the leaves. I remembered what the doctor said. Bleeding eyes is a sign of long-term stress. If you don't change your life, next time it could be a stroke. I'd changed. Not because I was afraid to die, but because I wanted to live. Really live. Living isn't just existing. Waking up every morning, going to work, coming home, sleeping. Living is feeling, loving, being yourself. I opened my phone, looked at my confession post again. Thousands of comments. Thousands of women sharing stories like mine. Stories about men who wouldn't change, about forgiveness, about hidden wounds. I wasn't alone anymore. I opened my messages with Jessica. "Meet next week. Our women's group has 3 new members." Jessica replied right away. "I'll be there." I smiled. For the first time in 7 years, my smile reached my eyes. I thought about Michael. No more pain, no more anger, nothing. Just a little regret. Regret for that 24-year-old girl back then who stood in front of this door and said, "I love him," with all the faith of youth. She wasn't wrong to love. She was just wrong to forget to love herself. Late night, everyone in the house was asleep. I still sat by the window looking at the moon. The scar on my finger was still there. It would be there forever, reminding me of what happened, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was just part of me, part of the story I'd lived. I held my hand up in front of me, looking at that finger in the moonlight. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for taking the pain. Thank you for reminding me. I survived." I looked out the window where moonlight stretched down the street. "Some doors slam on your hand," I whispered. "Some men make your eyes bleed, but I'm still here, still breathing, still smiling, still opening the door for a new day." I stood up and walked toward my bedroom. But before going in, I turned back to look at the front door. The dark brown wooden door, old and worn, with a scratch near the handle. The door that once slammed on my hand. The door that was once my pain. Now it was just a door. And me, I was the one opening it. Opening it to come in, not to leave. Opening it to receive, not to run away. Opening it for tomorrow, for the good things waiting ahead. I turned off the light and went into my room. Outside, the moon still shone, and a new day was about to begin.